First up, tensions in West Asia are at an all-time high after the deaths of Hamas Chief Ismail Haniyeh and the Hezbollah leader Fuad Shukr. Iran has warned of a retaliatory attack, and there are two scenarios that are likely here. Iran could either opt for a staggered response or undertake immediate coordinated attacks with the help of its proxies. Recent reports suggest that Iran and its proxies are preparing for a coordinated attack on Israel in order to establish deterrence while still avoiding a large-scale war. While on the other hand, Washington has reaffirmed its commitment to Tel Aviv. In a call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the US President Joe Biden outlined his commitment to Israel's security against all threats from Iran, including its proxy groups, Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthis. Meanwhile, the Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah has vowed to respond to Israel's killing of the group's top military commander, saying that Tel Aviv has crossed a red line.
Regardless of who you have killed, regardless of what you have destroyed or declared war here and there, and went to the furthest limits and crossed all the red lines, regardless of what we do, there will be no solution but to stop the aggression on Gaza.
And calls for revenge also echoed during Hamas Chief Ismail Haniyeh's funeral in Tehran, where Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khomeini reiterated Iran's position and intention. During the funeral procession, Khomeini warned Israel, and I quote here, "Following this bitter, tragic event which has taken place within the borders of the Islamic Republic, it is our duty to take revenge." Now, on the international front, also Iran has expressed its intention of retaliatory attacks. During a brief UN Security Council meeting, Iran said that it reserves its inherent right to self-defense, in accordance with international law, to respond decisively when it deems necessary and required. The Israel Defense Forces assert they are on a high alert, both in defense and in an attack mode as well.
We attacked on Tuesday night in Lebanon and eliminated Fuad Shukr in a precise air raid. I want to make one thing clear. There were no other Israeli airstrikes, missile strikes or drone strikes that night anywhere in the Middle East. I won't say anything else.
Now, the double assassination comes at a time when Israel faces multiple challenges on several fronts, including Syria, Iraq, Lebanon and Yemen, and reports now indicate that Iran will likely launch an initial strike with Iraq, Yemen and Syria. Some experts predict that Iran's response to the killing of Hamas's chief might be measured. Now, as part of the coordinated attack, Hezbollah could also respond to Shukr's assassination in Beirut, further propelling the conflict with Israel into a new phase. And joining us for the very latest on this is Dr. Malcolm Davis, Senior Analyst in Defence Strategy and Capability at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Dr. Davis, thanks very much indeed for talking to us this afternoon. Now, let me begin by asking you, are we looking at the possibility of a full-scale war in the region that includes Iran, Iraq, Yemen and Syria and their proxies on one side, and Israel and possibly its allies on the other?
I think the answer is definitely yes. I think that this attack by the Israelis that killed the Hamas leader occurred in Tehran. Whether it was an airstrike or whether it was a pre-deployed bomb, it occurred inside Iranian territory. So the Iranians will retaliate against that. And the question is, how do they do it? When do they do it? And how do the Israelis retaliate in response to that Iranian attack? And I think the real danger here is of an escalatory cycle, a tit-for-tat response going back and forth between Iran and its proxies against Israel and its allies that ultimately leads to a much wider war. So I think, unfortunately, the answer is yes, we are facing that wider war now.
Right, so that is certainly a very worrying scenario as we speak. But how does Iran match up to Israel's military prowess? What are the airstrikes and interception capabilities of Iran and Israel if we were to compare?
Well, I think when you look at the April attacks that were conducted by Iran against Israel, the way they coordinated those attacks they gave Israel's air defense and missile defense alongside US defensive systems time to intercept the attack. I think this time around, the Iranians probably won't be doing that. They will be doing a much more larger scale coordinated attack across multiple fronts that would bring in Hezbollah at the same time as attacks by the Iranians themselves, attacks by groups in Iraq and Syria, and also attacks by Hamas. And so I think that you will see a much more challenging tactical military situation being faced by the Israelis in terms of defending their airspace. Obviously, the Americans will assist where they can, but it's quite possible that on this occasion, the Iranian response will be much more devastating, much more effective than it was in April.
Okay, that's an important point you're making there. But let me ask you then, has Israel overstepped here by, carrying out these audacious attacks inside of Iran and in Lebanon, in Beirut?
Well, I think what the Israelis are trying to do is take out the leadership of the adversaries that they face, particularly in terms of Hamas, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, as well as potentially Hezbollah. And I think that the strategy they seem to be following is by taking out the leadership, it makes the actual fighting forces of their enemies much less effective and thus gives the Israeli Defense Forces an advantage. The risk, of course, is that in doing that, particularly with attacks inside Iran, they generate the very escalatory response they're trying to avoid. So have they stepped over the mark here? I'm not sure, because ultimately they do have to win against Hamas. They can't afford to allow Hamas to win, but the risk is that they are, facing a much larger war as a result.
Mm-hmm. And what are the other players at play, factors at play here in this? If this were to become a regional war, what about countries like Russia, China, the US? Where do they step in and come in?
Well, the US has already indicated that will support Israel in terms of defense against missile threats. So like the last time in April, you could see US forces, potentially the allies such as the UK, shooting down incoming Iranian missiles and drones. That's certainly a possibility. As for the Russians and the Chinese, I think the Russians have their hands full in Ukraine. They won't get involved necessarily, and certainly not the Chinese. So I do think that it's probably going to be the US. Interestingly enough, Erdogan in Turkey has warned of some sort of intervention if Israel were to attack Hezbollah. I'm dubious about that Turkey would be so stupid as to get involved in this war. So I think it would be basically Israel, potentially supported by the US, and the Iranians with their proxies facing off against each other.
Right. Dr. Malcolm Davis, Senior Analyst in Defence Strategy at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Appreciate you talking to us this afternoon and sharing your thoughts on this very grim situation that is at the moment at play in West Asia.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.